Okay, so talking about this Illuminati agenda, we're going to talk about a few other things that connect with it. And so we're going to talk about a role-playing inventor named Steve Jackson, who created a game in 1990. This game was called Illuminati New World Order. I kid you not, it was actually a role-playing game about the kingdom of the Antichrist. And so there were many things about this game that disturbed a lot of people. So a lot of people often wondered, where did Steve Jackson get the inspiration for the Illuminati board game? It turned out that Steve Jackson wasn't the only one asking where he got the inspiration for the Illuminati plan, because it turned out that the U.S. government also wanted to know, well, how did Steve Jackson know so much about certain things? I'm going to reiterate a fact to you about what happened to Steve Jackson. And so, on the morning of March 1st, 1990, without warning, a force of armed Secret Service agents, accompanied by Austin police and at least one civil expert from the phone company, occupied the office of Steve Jackson Games and began to search for computer equipment. The home, the writer of GURPS Cyberpunk, was also raided. A large amount of equipment was seized, including 4 computers, 2 laser printers, some loose hard disks, and a great deal of assorted hardware. One of the computers was the one running the Illuminati BBS. The company SJ Games fought back in court and finally won, but nearly went under financially. The investigation zeroed in on fraud supposedly committed by the company regarding the hacker activity and the fact that the company promoted the hacker's newsletter, Farak. However, this is so flimsy that it makes no common sense. In fact, the affidavit, they made so little sense that a judge threw the case out, awarding SJ Games $50,000 plus $250,000 in attorney fees. So that's a lot of taxpayers' money to pay for what the government called a stupid, nonsensical case. So, but it does highlight the fact that our Illuminati government, the Secret Service then being run by President George W. Bush Sr. at the time, was worried about something that SJ Games was up to, and that cooked up a reason to invade their offices and confiscate their materials. And so we think after you review, some of these materials that I'm going to discuss to you about, you'll come to understand why the government, why this Illuminati government, which is your government, by the way, did raid Steve Jackson in 1990. Because Steve Jackson was privy to information that was to come over a decade later. And so he knew future events so precisely that they did not want that game published under any circumstances. And so this has a lot to do with the fact of how well Satan plans these things. He plans them in advance. He sets his people up for that, so that his people, his particular leaders, will already know what they're supposed to be doing in the next 10, 20 years from now. And so I'm going to discuss some of these cards to you so you can get an understanding of what I'm saying. In 1990, he wrote a card called Rewriting History. And so what we have is that Jesus foretold of unprecedented deception in the end of the age. In fact, Jesus said, "Take heed that no man deceive you." He also said, "Many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many." He also said, "For there shall arise false Christ and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect." So the Illuminati realized they had to deceive an entire population of people if they had any hope whatsoever of achieving their covenant New World Order. They realized that the public schools were graduating students who read too well, too widely, and communicated too well. These students generally distrusted big government and governmental authority. Clearly, the Illuminati had to gain control of the public school system from the foundation upward if they had any hope of instituting a one-world government that would serve the New Age Messianic Christ. So as early as 1911, the Illuminati began buying textbook writing companies. It's interesting that they chose 1911 to do that, until they owned them all after World War I. Once they got control of textbooks, they gradually began to dumb down the criteria and rewrite history. This is why so many of the Native American history has been rewritten. because you come to find out so much of this stuff later that you didn't even read about in school. Today, students of public schools since World War II have received increasingly inferior educations compared to the educations around the world, particularly American population. Till now, the population is largely academically inferior. Its political herds are like sheep and religiously ignorant of the truth of Jesus Christ. And this is in the country that prides itself on knowing so much about Christ. That's a disgrace, people. His next card was called Terrorist Nuke. This card is one of the most shocking of all, especially in the light of the fact that this game was first invented sometime in 1989, 1990. How in the world does Steve Jackson know that the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center are going to be attacked? Look at the card. It's the two towers. Look at the explosion of the card. Look at how that goes, into which I invite you just to go on the internet and just Google in Steve Jackson games, and you'll find out all that I'm talking about there. In fact, this card accurately depicted the World Trade Center attack, that one tower was going to be struck first. This picture accurately depicts the moments between the first tower strike and the second one. The card accurately depicts that the place of impact is some distance from the top of the Twin Towers. The plane hit in the approximate area of the first tower. How could he have known that? The card accurately depicts the Illuminati leadership by showing on the building to the extreme left of the card the Illuminati pyramid with an all-seeing eye in the middle. It stands obscuredly from everything else, and it has a large resemblance to Building 7. People have no idea how that building even went down. The caption at the top properly identifies the perpetrators of the attack as supposed terrorists. But in fact, these were not Arab terrorists that did that to you. These are your own government terrorists who, quite frankly, are getting quite sick of their people, and they're trying to drive you into fear and paranoia. And then we have the second card from this, from this order. And this card is called the Pentagon, and when I saw the card, I kid you not, I was freaked out by it. I think when I first held it, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. You had to, for this card to get made immediately right after, the Twin Tower card, you had to have advanced knowledge of the Illuminati plan. So whoever Steve Jackson was, he clearly had knowledge about the Illuminati, some very depth knowledge that he wasn't supposed to have. And I guess inventing this role-playing game could have been a way for him to try to put some knowledge out there. Or he could have just been an evil person and he was deciding to brag about the plan. But either way, one had to have advanced knowledge of the Illuminati plan to make that card. There's no way on earth that they would have been able to create pictures in 1990 that accurately depict events unfolding in September of 2011. So the Pentagon is literally shown on fire. We know that a plane allegedly flew into a section of the Pentagon, but yet the Pentagon was completely intact. So the situation depicted here is that the card shows a fire burning mightily in the center of the courtyard, showing an explosion that looks like it came from within the building rather than something actually crashing into it. The building looks undamaged enough so that normal activities can continue unattended. And we got another card that says population reduction. But it really, when you look at the card, it oddly has two towers and smoke rising from the towers with a demonic face on it. During the filming of the actual fire pouring forth from the Twin Towers, several cameras caught, in fact several photographs also caught, demon faces in the smoke. While most people were looking at this and just couldn't believe what they were looking at, many Satanists actually started testifying that the pictures that they saw in the demonic faces in the smoke looked exactly like demons they had seen in a ritual. When demons physically manifest themselves in this dimension, they said that these demons are known as fire demons, and it was to these demons that the ancient people, including the apostate Israelites and many other pagan groups, sacrificed their children to Moloch. And when you think about the Bohemian Grove and what's happening there, you will see that many of the spirits that the people worship in the American Illuminati are in fact fire spirits. And just so let some of you know, because there's a lot of deception about fire spirits, that they can survive the punishment of hell and this and that. Let me make this very, very clear for you about the spiritual world. The spiritual world is very different from the earthly world. Earthly material is very different from spiritual material. That means earthly fire is very different from heavenly fire, particularly hellfire. So let me make this clear for you. A spiritual being can easily blend in earthly fire. It can literally bathe itself in earthly fire. It can live in it if it wants to. But a spiritual being cannot withstand heavenly fire. Heavenly fire is very, very different from earthly fire, because heavenly fire is designed, this particular holy fire, it's designed to destroy spiritual beings, and Satan knows it and is dreading it, and he deceives a lot of you about that particular information that many of you should start getting hip on. And so why does the Illuminati, why do they do this? Why do they plan things and initialize in it and attack their own population? Why are they so hell-bent on driving fear into you? It's because the more and more things happen like this, the more and more your hearts will fail from fear. It says in the book of Luke chapter 21, men's hearts failing them for fear. Fear is what it's all about here. It's about to make you afraid in a way that will make you submissive toward their brainwashing. You rather accept brainwashing, many of you, maybe than what I'm telling you, because it's more easier to accept that. I mean, let's think about it for a minute. Imagine that Los Angeles was hit with a 9.0 earthquake, just out of nowhere, just has an earthquake. Imagine New York is destroyed by a nuclear bomb. Imagine World War III breaks out in the Middle East and the banks and stock markets collapse. Imagine the so-called extraterrestrials, Nephilim really, land on the White House lawn and introduce themselves to you. Imagine food disappears from the markets and some people disappear. Imagine people think that the Messiah showed up and took everybody off the earth. Can you imagine what would happen? If you're not prepared for these things, can you imagine what will happen? If Nephilim appear to you and call themselves extraterrestrials, and you had no idea about the Bible and Nephilim or anything like that, imagine what that'll do to your brain. Imagine earthquakes hitting in places that you shouldn't have an earthquake in. Imagine how you would handle that. Imagine how you will handle getting on top of a roof and seeing a major city like New York City getting blown to smithereens. The fact is, you couldn't be able to handle that, and that's exactly what they want. And the reason why you can't handle that is because you guys don't have Christ in your lives, and only Christ can shield you of the brainwashing and the evil of what's going on in the world. He's the only one that can provide the sufficient armor that you will need to be able to handle situations like that, and not give your life for the earth and not live for the earth, but to be willing to throw it away, as Jesus said, so that you're not living for the earth, but you're willing to die and have courage and faith in Him, regardless of what happens. So this is why they're trying to take Jesus out of your life, because Jesus can provide the protection that you will need. So you need to get spiritually ready. You know what I mean? You need to be adequately protecting your loved ones. This is the reason why this ministry that you're seeing is happening. We do these videos for that reason. We do it because we want people to be informed. We don't want people paranoid, and we also don't want people attacking and killing and condemning the government either. We just want people to be informed so that you can comfortably walk this world, not in a fear of this world, and not, you know, and not getting hit with things you didn't see coming, but you assess this knowledge to prepare yourself for all variables, and so that you're able to walk this world with confidence. And so this is the aim of what we're trying to do. And so a lot of people also see the all-seeing eye. The all-seeing eye we talked a little bit about, and so I'm just going to give a little bit of background information on what the all-seeing eye. When Jay-Z wants to throw it up, and when everybody from every celebrity and politician down to their mother wants to throw it up, the all-seeing eye actually comes from the old world. It actually came from the fallen religion of Atlantis, who used to be the sons of God, many of them. It actually comes from the Canaanite family, from Cain, into which it's inspired by Satan. It's Satan's religion, it's Satan's eye. And so what happened was the Canaanites were originally following it. The sons of God fell through the daughters of men, and they adopted it. And then the ancient Babylon, or the Babylon of Nimrod's line, they adopted it. And then Egypt adopted it, and it became very, very popular eventually with many people. So the all-seeing eye was representative of Lucifer as worshipped under the sun god. And so these considerations lead you to an interesting topic, that the eye of mind, or the eye of Horus, is what's on the back back of the $1 bill, and it conveys the idea that Satan sees into places that you can't and does things in secret that you cannot comprehend.